Director Clark,
Present.
Director Penrose,
Here.
Director Decker,
Here.
Director Sedekada,
Present.
Director Grant, you also
Present.
Thank you. Very good. Thank
Aye.
you. And Vice Chair, Director Rock.
Here. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is public comment and oral communications for items not on the agenda. General Manager Papavadu.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd like to welcome Robert Barkley, our maintenance mechanic, who joined us about 10 days back. He's got tremendous experience. He's got 4 years in the United States Marine, both in water purification, sewage treatment, and water testing. And thereafter, he's been there for about 10 years with local iron workers, local 377 iron workers. And of course, he's also a local person who lives in Half Moon Bay.
All right.
So,
Yay.
welcome, welcome.
Welcome, welcome. Very nice. I don't see anybody in our audience. Do we have anybody online who would like to address the board on the consent items? I see no hands raised. Oh, yes, we have Greg.
To follow up on the discussion, was it a couple of meetings ago where we talked about the overflows at the plant that occurred through the pipes as opposed to, from the river or groundwater. We had excess flows above normal capacity, above theoretical capacity, like in December 14th, 2021. And the discussion led to, we're going to get some meters. And so I just wanted to know where we're going to try and identify the source of the excess flows. Thanks.
Yep, we've already started that process and contacted the vendor who can help us with it. We are waiting for quotations for the flow meter. We'll bring it back to the board at a later date once we're ready.
Okay. Anybody else online? I don't see anybody. All right, so we're going to move along to the consent agenda. Sorry. Is there anybody who would like to pull any items A, B, or C, or address them to allow us to go ahead and approve them after we address them?
I move that we approve the consent agenda, approve minutes of March 25th, 2024, approve disbursements for April 8th, 2024, and authorize the general manager to attend and be reimbursed for expenses. Manager Leadership Summit hosted by CSDA during June 23, 25 in Anaheim, California.
I second that.
Any comments or questions? Okay, could we have a roll call, please?
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Sedekada,
Yes.
Director Grant,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rock.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion carries unanimously. Moving on to regular business, item 4A, discuss proposed contract collection services budget for fiscal year 24-25 and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for approval.
So this is the contract collection services budget. First of all, I'd like to thank the finance committee and our finance team, basically Peter Medina, George Evans, Callie, for putting this budget together. And we have also had discussions with member agency managers, and they have feedback and incorporated all those comments. Thanks to them for reviewing the budget and providing us the necessary guidance. So there is a reduction in the collection services budget compared to last year. And we also have determined that there is about 74,646,000 remaining from our previous reserve, which was audited and found that much money was remaining, so that has been deducted, and the detailed budget is right. Yes, okay, so staff is here to answer any questions, if there are any, they'll be happy to provide.
I would like to say I was sort of pleasantly amazed when I saw that the collections budget was going to cover exactly same work that's always done every year at nearly 1/4 less the cost. But, and as I looked through this, I thought, how can that be? Well, you can't. There is that 74,646 from last year's reserves. And since the collections budget is a separate budget, that has got to mean it came from last year's budget as unspent. So that's not, and that's, Sam already has the money, and that is going to be applied to the budget for collections. But the actual amount proposed to be spent is actually higher than last year. That doesn't mean it will all be spent because it wasn't all spent last year, but it's about $39,000 higher. But so I don't think that showing a 24% decrease in the cost or the spending actually portrays what's going on. And but I will have to say that the good news is that that extra money above last year is only about 5.7% of an increase, and in proposed spending. We'll see how it actually works out. And that's a lot less than my grocery bill and my gas bill has gone up in the last year. So, and a good job is being done on collections. So, those are my comments.
Yeah, I would like to further add that this also includes the 3% increase as per the local 39 MOU on the payroll. We've accounted for that. Plus, we've also accounted for a small amount of money because the MOU is due for renewal starting January 2025. So we are also expecting an increase, probably a little more than 3% or whatever. We've got that cushion so that we can take care of that in future.
Any questions from other directors or comments? Is there anybody online who would like to address this item? I see no hands raised.
I move that we approve the contract collection services budget for fiscal year 2024, 2025, and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for approval.
A second.
Roll call, please.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Decker,
Aye.
Director Slater-Carter,
Yes.
Director Grant,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rodak.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Moving along to item 4B, discuss proposed general budget for fiscal year 24-25 and authorize the general manager to submit it to the member agencies for approval.
Okay, so let me share my screen and put together a few PowerPoint slides to make it more clear. That's the question. There you go.
You got it?
Slideshow. Okay. So we are here at the board meeting discussing budget. Why bother the budget? But we need to worry before and we need to worry after. That's why we've got the budget slide there, okay? So let's start the operations budget. You have the detailed budget in your packet, but I'm going to highlight only the certain points which we want to drive home. All authorized positions are included in the budget. There is no vacancy as of now, neither are we asking for any extra staff in this budget. All applicable merit step increases at one step are included in this budget. As you're aware, we have step 1 to step 7 as per the MOU which was signed. And each year we have one step increase, and that is what has been accounted for. We've also applied 3% CPI to all non-personnel costs, unless other changes were needed due to either actual or anticipated events. We've, as indicated for the collections budget, we've included a buffer for anticipated increase in labor costs. Labor negotiations are set to begin with the approval starting January 2025. And infrastructure budget has been reduced by about 218,000 from last year's budget amount. So in a nutshell, the general budget has wages and benefits an increase of about 10%. Legal, engineering, and professional fees have gone up by about 17%. All other expenses, which are basically utilities, insurance, equipment rental, maintenance services, chemicals, permits, supplies, all these clubbed together have gone up by about 14%. Operating budget, which is less infrastructure, has gone up by 13%. And infrastructure has decreased by about 7%. So all in all, the general budget has increased by 7%. So the expenses by various category, which is also indicated in your packet in the staff report, is the wages and benefits is contribute about 30%. Infrastructure is the maximum, which is about 33%. And then comes all other expenses, which I indicated earlier, it's 22%. The legal and professional services is about 16%. This is a total of about 9.4 million. So without the infrastructure, the operating expenses is about 6.38 million. As far as the staffing is, in staff dedicated to the general budget, which is basically operations. And to go back onto collections budget, we have 4 there. So 13 plus 4, we have a total staff of about 17, which includes the general manager also. So in this general budget, it covers 13 employees, 1 which is a GM contract, then we have 6 employees which are scheduled for step increases, and 6 employees are currently at top step. That is no more increases, just they get the 3% or whatever is signed by the MOU, the COLA increase. So at the key changes, you have the operating budget, you have the personnel costs, this is about 287,000 increase. Engineering services, based on year-to-date actuals, about 3,863. Professional services, which is increased by 245,000. And the sum of all these things is about 828,564. To give you a detail about what the professional, legal and professional services comply, that is about increase of about 245,000. So the major vendors in the professional services is Calcon System, Britton & Tucker is legal services, Boucher Law is legal services. We also use Boucher Law for employment services like HR, recruitment. And then we have RV, Accounting and Advisory, who's our accounting financial consultant. Precision IT Consulting, who is our IT provider. Then we have Kaufler Electrical, who does routine work on providing winding to our motors. We do have the effluent pump and other pumps, which take a long time to get new pumps if you have to procure it. So what we do is, if there's a breakdown of the motor, we send it to them for rewinding. Then we have Peninsula Pump and Equipment, who've been helping us with all pump repair and refurbishing. We have Integral Consulting, who did hydrodynamic flood modeling for us, and we hope to use them for further study. We'll bring it back to the board later on to get approval for other groundwater analysis and other things which we talked about in our previous meetings. Then we have Alpha Analytical Lab, who does our lab testing. So CalPERS rates, we have no control over the CalPERS rates, as you're aware. For the classic members, for the next year, it's goes up slightly from 13.26, it went up to 13.31. Petra members are the members who have joined after 2014, I believe, where it's gone up from 8 to 8.18. And that is the employer contribution. Then the employee contribution remains the same for classic members and Petra members. The unfunded liability goes up for classic members from 253 to about 308,000. So the total payment for unfunded liability is about 312,000. So based on the calendar year's flows, this was brought to the board in the month of February, and Half Moon Bay is about 60.82. Montara is about 20.14, and GCSC is about 19.04 percentages. So the entire budget calculations have been based on these. So which means Half Moon Bay, the proposal is about 5.6 million. There's a change about 310,000, which is 6% change. GCSD is about 1.76, change of about 114,838, change of about 7%. Montana is about 1,868,000, change is about 11%, which is about 182,207. So these are the typical flow allocations, which we had discussed in the month of February, which shows how the flow decreased for Half Moon Bay from 61.5 to 60.82 this year. And then we have GCSD, where also it's marginally decreased 19.05 to 19.04. And in the case of Montana, it's increased slightly from 19.4 to 20.1. So this is the division budgets for fiscal year, where the administration is about 16%. You're aware that we have these three categories, four categories: administration, treatment, by 16%, treatment increased by 8%, environmental compliance by 6%, and infrastructure decreased by 2%. So staff is here to really happy to answer any questions, and they can stop sharing and we'll go back to the slide if you have any questions.
Thank you, Kishan. Questions from directors? Matthew?
I'm referring to pages 51 and 52 in the agenda, in the packet, which cover legal services, which looks like it's going up, anticipated about 4%. Engineering services are anticipated to go up about 3%. But on the next page, professional services are shown rising about 30%. What drives that assumption that generic professional services would go up 30% from what year to year?
Yeah, that is based on the anticipated, based on the projected, as per what professional services has incurred as of now. We've got a lot of electrical work being done from Calcon, which is the part of professional services. And I might have missed something. Peter, would you like to barge in?
Yeah, no, so if you look at it, the anticipated, as well, Keisha said, the anticipated expenditure for the year is far more, that's not far more, but it's quite a bit more than what we had budgeted for. And it's really a matter of the way that we budgeted last year. What we did was we got all of our vendors for these various accounts, and we looked at it project by project. And what we said is, okay, yes, that's not recurring, that's not recurring. And because of that, the budget for last year was, much reduced actuals. Just as we said, we did not anticipate projects to continue. And then what we saw this year is that we were vastly under budgeted. And so I said, we're trying to rectify that by just basically looking at it a different way as opposed to vendor by vendor, project by project, to say, okay, historically speaking, this account, even though we don't use this vendor per se, we're going to have activity in this account. And I said that was a mistake that we made last year.
I have seen that, especially the Calcon monthly billing is really high.
Yes, we're doing a lot of maintenance and in the plant,
Yeah.
which is outside the infrastructure, which is outside the capital budget. So that's why it gets billed to the professional services. Otherwise, if Calcon is doing any work on any infrastructure project, then it goes to the infrastructure account.
I will just say that we looked at it pretty closely, and it seemed to us, the CalCon thing, you've got to do it, right? I mean, it seemed totally reasonable.
Yeah.
But we were wondering about budget for accounting services. And that's something we'd like to, understand more. Maybe it's not the place to do it tonight, but maybe the finance committee can just look at, how we're budgeting for that. Like, who do we have looking over? Is there a way to save money? But it seems to me it seems to my staff too, Director Penrose, that might be a place that we can look
Yes.
more closely at.
Right.
Not saying that we're against it, but I mean, we just want to understand it more.
Yes, I got the feedback from your public works director last week. We discussed about it, and we're trying to get a lot of finance related things in-house. So we are in the process of doing that. So hopefully next year we'll be able to bring down a lot of subbing it out to financial consultants.
Okay. All right, so maybe we talk more about that. Director Grant?
I have a question about the insurance premiums. So there's an increase of 111,000 due to new policies and prior year claims. Did that go up because of these prior year claims, or is that just an overall the industry has raised their rates?
Good question.
Okay. A very good question. It actually went up not only because of what's happened in the past, but also because we've added a new policy, which is a flood policy, which was not there earlier. So the flood policy requires a certain amount of premium, which is a little high. So because of what we experienced last time and which the insurance was not able to cover, we said, let's take a flood policy this time and see how we go about it.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Is there anybody online with questions or comments? I don't see anybody. Not many in attendance tonight. Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion
Peter, I'll second yours.
All right.
to bring this proposed budget to the attention of each participant. Sam?
That's good. Thank you. Could we have a roll call, please?
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Hi.
Director Becker,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Director Grant,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rivett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to item 4C, authorize the general manager to purchase and replace a vehicle. We need a new vehicle.
A surface structural maintenance crew.
Okay, yeah, I was looking at the
Yeah.
bookmark. We're going to talk about a vehicle here.
Okay, so we have 3 trucks for 3 maintenance employees as of now. One of the truck is no longer usable. So which means there are only 2 trucks now for 3 employees. And we have a new employee who joined today. He's one of our 3rd employees. So right now he doesn't have a truck, so he's actually shadowing and going along with another person. So we definitely need the 3rd truck.
I would think you wouldn't hire somebody unless they brought their own truck.
And let us paint on
That would be good one, yes.
You mean with a service body of $13,000?
Yeah, so this truck which gave away was actually purchased in 2008, and we've spent a lot of money on it. In the past, we spent about 42,000, and just a couple of weeks back, it just died on its way, so we had to tow it to the shop. We took it to the shop, got an estimate, and we found that the estimate to repair it was almost $50,000. They said, no way, they're not going to fix a truck which is that old and this will not give us much useful life. So that's why we reached out, and fortunately for us, we are able to get certain trucks quickly. Otherwise, there was a long waiting period because these are service trucks and not like our passenger trucks, which you just go to the dealers and pick it up. But we do have a couple of them available at various dealers.
Where is the industry vis-a-vis electric service trucks?
Yeah, we thought about it, but for a service truck like these, we thought electric would be a little difficult because number one, these are F3 type, F3 350 ones, and getting electric is difficult. Plus, when it goes for emergency operations, it has to be out in the field for many hours, and then we are afraid that the battery might die down or travel too much. So, for these purposes, we would like to encourage electric vehicles.
Our public works director, though, thinks that SAM is subject to CARB regulations on replacing vehicles with electric. So I'm just wondering, maybe Jeremy can weigh in. Replace fossil fuel vehicles with electric vehicles at this point?
Isn't that?
Yeah, the rules are still pending. They're not, I don't think they're final yet, but because they had to go through the Office of Administrative Law, but it depends on fleet size, one of the issues. And so whether SAM is required to do it, one of the issues would be fleet size, but it is coming. It's just a question of when.
Yeah, I think it says 50% of your purchases you should consider electric or something, and that is from starting next year or something, right? Yeah, but anyway, it's 50% of the thing. So our admin vehicle, which we're planning on replacing after July, is coming soon, and we'll definitely be looking at hybrid.
It's like Maz has his hand raised, so he might be able to get some insight on that question.
Oh, okay. Miles?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in as far as the fleet size and some of the regulations. It is a little bit of a situation with regards to the new measures by CARB through the Air District, and my understanding is that if you're 10 or more fleet vehicles, that you have certain requirements that actually start this year. And that's, there's a couple of different ways you can go about it. You can either adopt a plan that does full replacement at a certain date, or you have one, or you start actually doing 1-for-1. So the 50%, as I believe Kishan mentioned. And then for smaller vehicles, for smaller fleets, less than 10, that requirement still kicks in, but it starts in 2027. So just something we wanted to flag as a potential concern is start that conversation, since we, obviously the SAM needs to start replacing some of the vehicles now, and the city's going through the same process. So I wanted to just flag that and bring that to the board's attention for future discussion.
Thank you.
And is a fleet every truck at SAM, or is it just trucks that are used for one purpose or one fleet, and trucks used for another purpose or another fleet? How does that work?
It's all inclusive.
Well, you want to let Maz take a stab there? That's actually a really complicated question because there's different rules for different fleets, unfortunately. And they have different timelines. And so it does get pretty complicated. Maz, you want to weigh on that if you're still on?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely language in the Air Board requirements that if a certain vehicle is not available in a zero emission vehicle format, there's definitely considerations for that. But and that's more of a response and reporting requirement to the state. But yeah, there are exceptions even within the fleets, but our understanding is that it's, there's a couple of different ways to comply. City of Half Moon Bay is looking at doing 1-to-1 replacements as long as we're allowed, which is through 2027. And then after that, it's the requirement triggers full, 100% vehicles should be zero emission vehicles. It still is going to be interesting to see how the industry, as far as the manufacturers of these different equipment and vehicles, come into compliance with this, because again, some of these vehicles just aren't quite available in a zero emission format.
Yeah, just another thing, and that there are, when I talk about different fleets, there's gasoline vehicles, there's diesel vehicles, and they have heavy duty vehicles and lighter off-road vehicles. There's a whole bunch of different fleets, and unfortunately they have different timelines. And so, but yeah, I mean, if there's any uncertainty for SAM, we can dig a little bit deeper into that, make sure that we have the right timelines that SAM's actually required based on fleet size to comply.
Director Slater-Carr?
Yeah, I've just been investigating this stuff out of interest mostly, but for cars, the operations and maintenance on EVs are much higher than on gasoline. And for little agencies like us that are watching the percentage points, it makes a big difference. They're also not as reliable or as quick to charge as one would hope. And I think the longer we can put off this kind of purchase, the better. But just on a philosophical point, EVs may have lower emissions from the tailpipe, but they wear through tires faster. They leave more tire debris, particulate matters on the road. They break down the roads and the overpasses and the parking structures faster because they're significantly heavier. And I think these are all problems. And then there's also all the battery parts, where they come from and what kind of conditions they are mined under. So I think the longer we can put this off until we can get better solutions, I think the better off Sam and the environment will be.
Catherine, can I ask you where you got this information that electric vehicles are more costly for maintenance and operation? Because that is universally what the manufacturers and agency and everything I've ever read says exactly the opposite.
They don't include replacing the battery, which adds up.
Yeah.
If you're going to keep it for a while, it's just like you replace the tires more often. The older EVs, not so much, but the newer ones have to, again, there's more requirements for them. And I was talking to my automobile dealer about that. And one of the other problems, and this is probably for passenger cars, but in order to meet all of these standards, it's very difficult in many car lines to find ones that have a real spare tire. They have what are called donuts or gel top inflators. And you don't want to drive on a donut on our 13,000 pound or vehicles. We've got too much at risk for an accident with those from the tires.
Well, that's a carryover from gas and diesel vehicles. When you go buy a new car these days, a spare is an extra.
It is. And for those of us who are thinking about driving across California or up and down California, a spare is critical.
Right.
Because of the potholes on all the roads, including our Highway 1 and Highway 92.
Then there's that. And because if I'm driving alone as a single woman, I don't want to be stuck in the middle of the road at night. In the middle of the night, exactly.
Jeremy
Jeremy.
Yeah, just one additional note. Great points being brought up, and I can next meeting I can bring back a little bit additional information. One of my other clients actually is involved in challenging the EPA heavy duty fleet rules, which primarily deals with engines, diesel engines, and less with the actual fleet management. But there's a couple other issues that Sam just needs to think about. One is the infrastructure that goes along with charging, right? So if you don't have it now, you're going to have it because you're going to have the ability to charge all those vehicles. And a lot of people don't have that. So you're going to have it. The other piece that requires some kind of careful thought is, are there circumstances, do these vehicles do things that require them to operate in environments and circumstances where a battery may not be sufficient, right? Like for example, I have some clients who have, they do a lot of field work where they're, say operating a riverbed for very long periods of time. So the battery is not going to last there. And also it's going to be exposed to water and elements and things like that may not be conducive to EV. So I don't know if Sam has any vehicles that meet those criteria or not, but there's something to think about whether there are requirements that Sam has that could be potentially impaired or frustrated if we had to go all electric. So just a couple things to think about.
Director Carr?
Yeah, one of the things that I have heard big truckers are doing is they just carry a gas-fired generator in their truck. So they can charge their truck, their vehicle when they're in a place where there is no EV stuff. But again, that adds a lot of costs and other stuff. So the industry is changing, and we'll see what happens. But I think I'd like to make a motion to approve the purchase of the new service truck for the maintenance crew.
I'll second.
Any other comments? Can I have a roll call, please?
I want to make one last comment. This is such an enlightening conversation. When I got on this board, we were asked to approve purchase of a vehicle, and the vehicle we were placing had cracked windshield. It was rusted through in several parts. It had lost its brakes and run into somebody's garage in Montera. And this board has come a long way. Thank you.
Can I have a roll call, please?
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Penrose?
Hi.
Director Decker?
Aye.
Director Slater Carter?
Yes.
Director Grant?
Yes.
Vice Chair Ruddock?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to the attorney's report.
General Manager's report.
I'm sorry, general manager's report.
Sounds good. Well, the detailed report will be in your packet in the second meeting of the month, but I wanted to inform all the directors and the public to swing by Princeton Pump Station. A lot of activities going on. There's a lot of progress. We've got the wet well in place. They've actually also started working on the manholes. So we've got a lot of work to do still, but there's a lot of activity going on there. Please swing by there. Of course, when you go to the job site, you need a hard hat.
Not a hard hat?
That is mandatory. Otherwise, swing by Sam, we'll give you a hard hat and then you can go there. Okay. So that's all I wanted to keep all info.
Are we keeping a photo record of that?
Oh, yeah. And if you observe it, my weekly reports have always got pictures of the Princeton Pump Station. The past 2 weeks I've been attaching that to my report, and I'll continue to do that.
Wonderful.
Okay. Moving on to the attorney's report.
Nothing to report. And I have no need for a closed session tonight.
Okay, director's report. Anybody? Nope. Okay. Future agenda items.
Yeah. At some point in the past, and I don't remember when this was, maybe a year ago, we talked about trying to get a list of equipment that Sam had with its life expectancy so that we wouldn't have things breaking down or failing before we were aware that the time was coming for it. And I'm wondering if we have done something like that.
So you're kind of talking like an asset management system.
Yes. Yeah.
We do that for our audit purposes. In our ACFR thing, we always have that go through that. But yeah, I can send that what we've got. And if you want us to put in more hours and get more details, or you want us to concentrate only on the infrastructure, like capital equipment items, then we can do that separately and come back to you.
I don't know how much work it is. I don't know, maybe it's something we could talk about in the operations committee and see what makes sense. I know that there was a period of time there a couple of years back where we were being hit with emergency after emergency after emergency because our equipment was failing. And, so we talked about it then, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, we did one in 2015, 2016. I think we did a risk management thing. We listed out all the equipments, and we said what is the number of years that it still has got, and what is the probability that will break, and then give you the risk factor. We'll update that and.
Didn't Dan Child do that?
Yeah, Dan Child did that.
Yeah, that's right. He did.
He did.
He did.
I think that should be part of our capital improvements program.
Yes.
And my wish list, or my wish item would be that we have a a schematic of the plant online, and you can click on the various components, and it will call up, you know, this component was replaced in 2017. Just so, you know, the public can even just check, you know, how are we managing our, you know, plant and our equipment? You know, you should be able to click on something and get a little bit of a history, you know.
I think that's a really good idea, but it's a security risk.
Well,
In this day and age, there are many things which 5 years ago were not security risks, but for the water district, for Montero Water District, we have to keep our water district like off the internet, top secret, because people could do terrible things to a water supply.
well, I'd like to know more about that concern, but what I do want to know is, you know, we should, as decision makers, to Deborah's point, know what's been replaced, what's going to need replacing in a couple of years, what's the life expectancy. I want us to pay closer attention to that stuff, so we're not caught, like Deborah said, caught by emergencies.
Yep, we plan on bringing the 5-year CIP, probably May or June. Because May we'll take it to the managers, and then June we'll bring it to the board. So once we go there, then we can decide how we want to improve upon that and what all we want to.
So your CIP is built on an existing inventory and lifespan.
Yes.
Some things like the bolts in the pumps for the Hetch Hetchy water system were given an infinite lifespan, and then they started rusting through, and that was part of the major expense. So,
and we don't want to get in a position where we have too much deferred maintenance.
No,
and we want to be able to project for, you know, budget purposes. So,
So what
but I'm glad you're bringing up the CIP, because that was going to be my next point. Is you know, we should be looking at that project list and, you know, being on an agreement on the priorities. So.
Barbara and I,
We've started from a database which we had earlier, and we know we had a 20-year CIP which we had brought to the board a couple of years back. So when to the database, we know what all has been already fixed and what is yet to be fixed or going to come up in the next few years. So based on that, we have formulated a 5-year CIP. So we'll bring it to the board, and then we can take your comments and improvement.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that's it for the regular agenda. Do we need to go to closed session this evening?
there is no closed session according to Jeremy.
Well, they're listed. We keep them on the agenda just as a placeholder. I don't believe we need one unless Kishan feels otherwise.
No.
Okay, so this meeting is adjourned.
Yay.